particularly state officers. Remember, you can send your feedback and questions on this particular show on our social media platforms at KUTV Kenya on Facebook, at KUTV_Kenya on Twitter, and KUTV Kenya on YouTube. My name is Irene Mwangi, but before we get into the nitty-gritties of this particular discussion, let me allow my guest to introduce himself kindly.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Pareno Solonka. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I practice in Nairobi. I have a firm known as Solonka and Solonka Advocates, where I'm based in Kilimani.
All right.
I was a former student here back then in 2019. I mean, the greatest law school that I can say in the country.
Yes, it is.
It is the greatest law school.
Yeah.
Yes. And yes, so that's me in brief.
That's basically you in a nutshell.
Yes.
Thank you so much for, coming back to Kenyatta University and, of course, giving us your time to have this particular discussion.
Yes.
When it comes to personal accountability of government officials, it is something that people question where it lies.
Yeah.
So from where you sit, where is it in the Constitution? What are the statutes, the acts actually of Parliament that actually govern personal accountability here in the country?
So to begin, when you talk about personal accountability and the Constitution, it goes back to what is the rule of law and what is constitutionalism. So constitutionalism is basically it's a concept that government authority, every person is bound by the Constitution. That is constitutionalism.
Yeah.
And there are professors who've written about it. You can have, for instance, Professor Okoth Gendo, who basically stated that you can have constitutions without constitutionalism. Basically, you have a constitution that is not respected by anyone. It's just a document. So constitutionalism is the concept that government authority or whatever authority is governed by the Constitution. Now we go a step further. What is the Constitution? Because I really believe that we have a duty as lawyers or people who are educated to explain in the simplest form
possible
what the law is, what the Constitution is, what is this thing that people call the law. So the Constitution is basically, from very many authors or jurisprudential philosophers, is a contract, basically a contract between we the citizens and the people who government. So a contract between the citizenry and the government, whereby we the people donate our power to the government for good, for all, or for everyone. So that's basically the Constitution. So the Constitution of Kenya is a contract between us Kenyans and the government. Now the rule of law, because it forms part of it's part and parcel of the same thing. The rule of law is basically the principle that goes that every person is bound by the law. Every person is bound by the law. Obedience to the law, the concept of checks and balances, where if the government acts in excess, then they are checked with regards to to whatever excesses that they've acted upon. But basically, the rule of law from the naming itself is the law being supreme to all.
Okay.
Now, you've asked me, where do we get the concept of personal responsibility of public officers or government officials? And it's the Constitution. Where in the Constitution we can begin? Article 2 of the Constitution. It's the supreme law. Everyone in this country, the president, cabinet secretaries, every single person, judges, every person you can think of is bound by the Constitution. It goes a step further. We can look. We have national values of integrity, transparency, public participation. But now the most crucial, the most important or specific national value and guiding principle that is relevant to this discussion is on accountability. So when you talk about personal responsibility, we're talking about accountability. Is a government official accountable for his actions? That is taking ownership of their actions. So that, together with various articles such as Article 73 of the Constitution, which provides that public office is held in public trust, again goes back to the concept of social contract. It's a contract between us, the people, together with the government. So it's a public trust, and it again provides for the aspect of personal responsibility, together with other statutes. For instance, the Leadership and Integrity Act, which under Section 8 and Section 9 of the Leadership and Integrity Act, it provides or talks about personal responsibility.
So you've mentioned, a number of acts of parliament, actually the Leadership and Integrity Act, and also different articles of the Constitution that covers, personal responsibility, which leads to accountability. But why is it not a common concept in terms of implementation? Why do people struggle with accountability, especially among state officers, because of the attitude that is there? Why do we have this particular situation in the country?
Now, implementation, that's where the problem is, implementing. And it goes back to what Professor Cord stated, constitutions without constitutionalism. So the issue of implementing is another problem altogether. I've heard other people talking about it being a cultural or behavioral aspect, in that we just don't take it seriously, like what other jurisdictions, what other people in other jurisdictions do. But in Kenya, implementing that, all those provisions of the law that I've provided or talked about, it's completely, how can I say, it's not there completely. It's not there completely. Now, the issue is we have a very good constitution. We have very good laws. Yeah, I've already in my introduction mentioned the articles and the sections of the law that provides for personal responsibility. Now, why is there no implementation? Now, I'll give, because I believe in giving examples. I'll give examples. So, for instance, last year, during the Gen Z protests, there was a lot of shootings that happened. People were killed, people were maimed, people were injured, and so many illegalities happened. But have we had a single person taking up responsibility for that? Yeah. And it goes back to what we talk about, cultural problem. It starts from the small, just from very minute basic things.
At the family setup.
Your family setup. Even when you walk around, I mean, what do police officers say? Hii ni serikali. No, in Swahili, hii ni serikali. Hii ni mali ya serikali. Serikali italipa. Serikali italipa. So it goes to the fact that, yes, okay, the government in the end will be held responsible, because people will file cases, and I believe there are cases that have been filed whereby the government, for instance, will be held responsible. Then the government maybe will pay damages and compensation, but at the end of it all, we won't have individual actors who perpetrated those illegalities taking ownership or taking personal responsibility for their misdeeds and illegalities.
All right.
Yes.
So away from the issue of being a societal thing in terms of a cultural behavior that we sort of have, is judiciary accountable in ensuring that there's personal accountability? Because at times the buck stops with them in terms of cases that have been filed in court to ensure that people are accountable, before we even get into other state bodies, constitutional bodies that ensure accountability in the different cadres in the public sector. So judiciary, being a lawyer for years now, has it been instrumental as a tool in this accountability fight?
Now, we can't single out the judiciary alone. It's the entire legal system.
Okay.
So we have the prosecutors, we have the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, we have the judiciary again, we have Parliament, which also exercises oversight.
The oversight,
Yeah. So I feel like every single entity has a role to play in this particular issue or discussion that we're having. On the judiciary, where I can comfortably state that there is an overlaps is, from many jurisprudential readings that I've come across, judges are not bold enough to actually actualize Article 73 as read together with Section 8 and 9 of the Constitution. So, for example, I'll say you will file a petition today in court challenging maybe an illegality by, let's use maybe the police officers. The court will look at the evidence and everything that you've laid out, and will find that true to it, on a balance of probabilities, there were violations of the Constitution and there were illegalities that were perpetrated. And it will actually proceed to give damages in that particular circumstance. However, they won't go ahead and find the particular person or the particular entity. Now, if there was an illegal, let's say, a shooting that happened, there was somebody who shot, who actually
Shot a citizen
shot the
in a
citizen.
protest, for
Now,
example.
on top of it, there was somebody who gave the order.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, that person who gave the order, there has to be personal responsibility, and that's why, and that's the discussion that we're having here today. So, on the part of the judiciary, it's the boldness. Now, you cannot blame the judiciary entirely,
Okay.
because, Kenya being the legal system in Kenya, you have to present your case before. It's not an inquisitorial system.
So, yeah.
It's more of a adversarial system, meaning you're the ones who are presenting your case in court. So it's not for the judges to craft orders that you've not claimed for. So you can find that maybe the reason why they haven't given such orders is because maybe the advocates didn't
Actually, explicitly
pray for them.
pray for that. The
Yes.
prayer sought by
They
the
didn't
petitioners.
explicitly pray for them. Yeah. So you cannot wholly blame them, but there is that aspect, because I have also read certain cases where the judges have shied away from going an extent further and saying that there was a breach and violation of the constitution in this particular circumstance, and you, as the officer in charge of this body, of this commission, or of this entity, was wholly responsible for this.
Okay.
Yes.
So is it a question of judiciary not being independent despite being a separate arm of government, because they have the wherewithal of making such bold decisions, especially in situations whereby a violation has been committed time and again? It is something that is happening in the society. For example, if we talk about the protest, every time we have protest, there will be a violation of human rights and police will be involved.
Yeah.
It is not something that is going to, that has started now. It has been there for quite some time.
Yes.
So is this arm of government turning a blind eye because they're not as independent over, issues that have been pointed out severally, that the independence of the judiciary is not as independent? The executive overreach sometime to the judiciary.
Yeah, there is, corruption. Of course, there is corruption. That is a fact. We cannot deny it. But again, I believe the judiciary, as we speak, we've had some. We're not where we were a few years back.
Yeah, we're not where we started.
We're not where we started.
The 2010 constitution being in place.
But at the same time, yes, you can see there's an aspect of independence also in the judiciary. Let's even look at, for instance, budgeting. Right now, the Court of Appeal, the judges of the Court of Appeal, there is a severe backlog because the number of judges on that court are very few.
Yeah.
Now, where do they get their budget from? Executive.
Yeah.
So there is that aspect, and it plays a crucial role. But at the same time, I won't blame it on it. It's just a matter of having one single judge staying true to the constitution, looking at the evidence on record, and clearly admonishing a particular individual for disobeying or for perpetrating an illegality. Now, let me give a very good example of something that has happened last year. And the genesis of the Gen Z protests.
Yeah.
I think it was in 17th of June. Not
Yeah.
the day in which people stormed Parliament, or the day before. The first day. If you remember
When
very
the
well,
protest started.
when they started
Yeah.
very well.
Yeah.
So, brief facts. People actually went and presented petitions to members of Parliament, and the members of Parliament, and they told them, no, we don't want this and this and that. Then what happened? Members of Parliament came out gesturing and making a lot of noise, saying that we will pass it by force, by force, by force. Then people started organizing what? Protests. When people were organizing protests, the day came. When the day came, I think it was the Nairobi, the police commandant Nairobi, Mr. Adamson Bugei. What did he say? That no protests will be allowed in Nairobi. In effect, he actually banned
The
the
right
right to protest,
Yeah.
which no person, even the president, has no right to ban
Yeah.
the right to protest or to picket. No one has that mandate. No one can do that. He basically suspended the constitution, and he knew very well. Those are things that you cannot excuse yourself. He knew very well that I do not have the powers to do this. I do not have the powers to suspend. I do not have the powers to ban. But he went ahead and did that. Now, his action of saying protests won't be allowed in the central business district, or nobody will be allowed to protest in central business district, led to a chain of reaction, which was people were arrested, people were beaten up, people were tear gassed, people were actually detained, and they were detained up to the wee hours of the night, and then later on released.
Yeah.
So the issue is, or what law are we following? What's the rule of law? Yeah, there is a good author, classic. It was John Rawls in his theory of justice. He basically said that the constitution, or basically the law, is a contract between the free and the equal. But now we can see very well that there are some people who are more equal than others. So I mean, you try to violate the law, you'll see what happens to you.
Interesting.
But then we have people who are highly placed in government who violate the law with little to no consequence, because they know, I will sit here, I will ban. But if liability is found, it will be found on the office. Yeah, it will be the office of then the Inspector General of Police. It will be the office of so and so, but not the individual person. So that's where the laxity is. That's where. That's why we are in this situation. Because, again, historically speaking, the issues we're facing now with regards to protests, because it's the most prevalent issue, are things that we were facing in 2022, in 2014. Remember the NASA protests? These are things that they are reoccurring. They are repeating themselves. 5 years from now, it will repeat itself. Another person will come in and he will say there are no protests. There are no protests. But what if the court finds that, it's not a building that actually violated the Constitution. It's not an office that violated the Constitution. It was you who violated the Constitution, and you are supposed to be held liable. If we had that one small example, I believe the next person who will be sitting in that pulpit will actually refuse to give out illegal orders. If they usually say these are orders from above, he will refuse. He will either resign rather than face the law and the consequences that come with it.
Yes, and I know you pointed to some people being more equal than others, which actually happens more often. But do you think there are legal gaps in terms of ensuring personal accountability in public sector? Because most of the time when somebody commits a violation or violates the Constitution, what we see most is somebody being transferred from one state department to the other. So which begs the question, what is happening here? Is it an issue of legal gaps in terms of identifying the violation that they did in this particular state department, or is it an issue of laxity, so to speak?
I honestly don't believe, and I know we have an audience here, maybe they'll give their views later on, but I honestly don't believe there's any gap in the law. It's very clear. If you read Article 2, the Constitution is supreme. If you read Article 37, public office is to be held in public trust. If you read the national principles and the national values and principles of governance under Article 10, it's very, very clear, straight on, that accountability, transparency, integrity, upholding yourself or holding yourself to standards that will actually promote the respect of the office. All these are good provisions of the law. They're very clear. Section 8 and Section 9 is actually in bold, very clear that government officials, public officers, state officers are to be held personally responsible for the consequences of their actions. So there is no gap. The law already provides for that. The issue is clearly implementation. Now, we start with what I've said, lack of a bold judiciary to actually affirm that. The other thing would be now lack of political goodwill. But now, being a lawyer, I won't fight it politically and say, you need to have political goodwill. I'll start from, from home. Now, from the legal aspect, we have judges, their petitions, their court cases. Kindly find one person liable. Find one person liable. That is where now we're supposed to be.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's it points to the widespread corruption that you're seeing in the country, because the law is there, but the goodwill is not there. And that is why now it's becoming a huge dragon to slay. So in your interaction with court cases, what are some of the landmark cases that, have come out boldly to shun the issue of state officers, violating the law? and ensuring that there's personal accountability. Because in other jurisdiction, certain cases have made it very worry for people to commit certain crimes because a standard has been set. In Kenya, do we have the set of standards, even though there are some brought here and there?
Yeah, okay. We have had some good cases. I'll start with, for instance, remember was it in back then, 2017, after the elections, 2017. Remember the Biguna saga? The court actually found certain officials, Matiang'i and other government, the Inspector General of Police, the Director of Criminal Investigations, they found them like in contempt of court. So we have such examples, but they actually never went to the root of it. That's a contempt proceeding whereby they disobeyed court orders and all that. But now I'm talking particularly in the aspect where the court actually makes a definitive determination that you and you are liable personally for violating Article this of the Constitution and for breaching the public trust of your office. So if there are good examples, I can't say they are, because if there were good examples, the same issues that we're facing right now will not have will not be repeating themselves or recurring over and over again. So we don't have, like for instance, during the initial Gen Z protests, the IG of police then was Koome. He left office, no consequences. Yeah, we had the minister, the cabinet secretary of interior back then. He's now the deputy president. Yeah, now the consequences, no one has really felt the brute consequences of actually having a judicial pronouncement against you, explicitly saying that you have breached the Constitution. Now let me give an example with regards to contempt cases. For instance, in the Miguna cases and all that, you will find, instead of even prescribing a jail term, the court gives options. Yeah, you will serve this number of years in jail or pay this fine. So what will they do? They will of course pay the fine. Yeah,
it's the easiest way out.
It's the easiest way out, and that is what we need to actually. It's like now a call to action that we need to actually stand firm and make sure that there are express pronouncements against these people. Now, when I can actually laud the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to some extent, because of we've seen some action.
They've tried to back a bit.
They've tried to some extent, despite some pushover, and even if we feel that they should be doing more, they have tried to some extent. And the most recent case, the former governor of Kiambu, Waititu, he was found liable. The EACC actually proceeded together. The director of public prosecutions prosecuted the case. But that is just one few examples. If we had more of this,
they'll start
a chain reaction. Look at the auditor's report. How many legalities have been brought out using the auditor's report? How many discrepancies? There are many discrepancies. But out of all these key government officials, you'll only find one or two, and you will find most instances, the only reason why they're actually being persecuted right now is because they're not in good books with the current regime. That is the only reason you will find.
All right, thank you so much, Wakili, for that. We'll be taking our first break, but do stay with us. We'll be back with more.
Baada ya kutafuta kazi, tunaweza kuanzisha miradi yetu ambayo ingetusaidia kubadilisha maisha ya wazazi wetu.
Kwa vijana wenzangu, wengi hawana kazi, lakini ikiwa sisi wenyewe tutajiamini, tunaweza kujiajiri wenyewe.
Afrika kwa kweli tuna mahitaji ambayo ukiyasuluhisha unaweza kuathiri watu kwenye bara hili.
Bila woga, watu huwa na uzalishaji zaidi, wanajawa na ujasiri, wanakuwa wabunifu na wanakuwa wenye maarifa.
Niliamua kuacha kazi. Hata kama sitafanikiwa, nitakuwa nimejaribu, nitakuwa najua haiwezekani.
Hakuna kitu cha ajabu hapa. Kila anayepata ufanisi hufanya kazi usiku na mchana.
Kitu kitakusukuma na kuwezesha kupata maarifa ambayo hukuwa nayo.
Tunajaribu kutengeneza kitu kitakachopita mipaka ya nchi hii.
Ikiwa unataka kubadilisha ulimwengu, anza na nyumbani.
So my name is Jakub Petri. I'm Associate Professor in the Institute of Philosophy of Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland. And I'm the main coordinator of the Cafe project, which is being here hosted by Kenyan University.
My name is Ewa Hudoba. I am a project manager in this consortium. Keep watching cutting edge research at Kenyan University Television.
Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Law Matters. Tonight we're discussing the issue of personal accountability when it comes to government officials and what is the trend here in the country. Is the law actually being, implemented as stipulated in the Constitution? Now, Wakili, we were talking about, the trend that is there in the country in terms of a precedent being set by the constitutional bodies and also arms of government in terms of ensuring accountability here in the country. Now, when it comes to public officers, given that we have seen them, slide time and again when it comes to accountability, is it a question of immunity, and where does immunity play out? Because when it comes to the issue of protest, which has informed part of our discussion, there's been the question that, sometimes the police are immune because they're in the line of duty, but bodies like IPOA that actually investigate these particular cases, they find that the police officers are actually in violation. And in other times, it's a situation whereby the police refuse to cooperate, so there's no particular evidence. But let me start off with the issue of immunity. Where does it play out when it comes to public accountability of state officers?
So the state officers are not immune.
Yeah.
They're actually not immune whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the exception of the president, which is actually limited, the immunity is actually also limited to
really.
things, functions of their office and all that. No one is immune. A police officer cannot shoot you illegally and then come and claim immunity. No, that's murder. That's why you're seeing right now the inquest proceedings in Rex Masai, in the Rex Masai case. They are standing before court. The court is inquiring into how this patriot died. And if somebody is found liable, irrespective of whether you are a police officer or you hold whatever office, you will actually be found, you will be taken to trial, and then a finding of whether you're guilty or not guilty will be made by the court. So there is no immunity. And we actually need to get rid of that notion. There is no immunity. What I can say in simple terms is buildings or offices don't commit violations. It's the people behind them who commit violations. And again, I will go back to the example of banning protests and it's a very, very, I don't know where they get this notion from, where they can control or suspend. It's basically suspending the constitution. Bungei banned protests. Where did he get the power to do so? He doesn't have the powers to suspend the constitution. So if he doesn't have the powers to suspend the constitution, and he proceeded to do that, he has no immunity. The court has to make a definitive finding that you acted illegally, you breached your office, And if a personal liability is found on that aspect, personal responsibility, that you are the one who caused this thing, I feel the next thing would be any damages that result as a result of those illegalities are supposed to be paid personally by him. Because what I can tell you is, again, it's on the burden of the taxpayers. We usually pay that, we pay for that burden.
We bear the burden.
If, let's say, the court finds that, indeed, this baby was shot, was maimed, was injured, the actions of the police were excessive, who pays that amount of money? It's the taxpayers. Because the government has been found liable because of misdeeds or some misadventures of a few individuals. So if we can pinpoint it specifically to certain individuals. Let them bear the responsibility. First, they lose their office. Secondly, on top of that, they are the ones who are supposed to be directly liable. So the long story short is they don't have any immunity. The Cabinet Secretary for Interior has no immunity. Yeah? We shouldn't take this notion that these highly placed people have immunity or they are above the Constitution. It goes back again. What is the supreme being in this country? The supreme being is the Constitution. We have the rule of law. No one is above it. Not the president, not the deputy president, no one.
There's this question about the government, operating in or acting in perpetuity. That is in regards to, we have seen the Auditor General, churn out reports to say this county under the governorship of this particular governor actually embezzled funds. There was, violation of the finance, the Public Finance Management Act and what have you. But by the time the report is coming out and actually being considered by the relevant bodies, in this case Parliament, the governor who was there at the time is now a CS somewhere.
Yeah.
But the violation was actually committed. Yeah. So the sitting governor says, this was not during my tenure. Maybe the former governor can be asked.
Yes.
The former governor is sitting in some cabinet. And therefore, that particular chain of events makes it a bit weak in terms of ensuring prosecution, because these things are being considered when some people are actually not in office. Yes. Others are actually, in other state department or working in different arms of government. So, what is usually the situation there? And is the government acting in perpetuity actually now a stumbling block in terms of ensuring accountability?
No, again, that you cannot even blame the government for it, because if somebody was a governor of this county and he's maybe the corruption scandals were unearthed after he left office,
yeah,
he can still be held liable.
But that has not been seen for some time now, and actually a case was presented in court for that, in that regard, that actually the delay in actually considering this particular report by the Auditor General actually derailing, the accountability
aspect. Yeah, okay, you may find, this is the thing, and again, let's look back at history. Remember, during the time when Moi was the president, you couldn't actually sue him. But after he left office, there were cases that were brought against him. And people have been awarded damages based on illegalities that even occurred during his tenure as president, years and years before. And this is what should happen. The issue is that is not the fact that maybe the government acting in perpetuity, or maybe the Auditor General report has delayed. There's no statute limitations in crime. If you acted illegally, there's no statute of limitations. So it's okay. The matter of or the issue of it took some time and then they've left office is neither here nor there. You can go after them. Give an example. The Mandago, remember these the scholarship scandals. Yeah. He's still embroiled in the dispute, despite him leaving office. I don't know about the case. I don't want to comment about the case, but that's actually what has to happen. If, let's say, the governor of Narok, or maybe the governor of Nairobi, or the governor, whichever, or maybe a cabinet secretary, or any person who holds public office leaves office, and after leaving office, it is actually unearthed that there were so many irregularities and illegalities that occurred, go after them for that. Yeah, let them serve prison terms, not just petty fines where they can pay. Prison terms. Yeah, let them serve prison terms. Let there be declarations that are made against their person, such that everywhere he walks, it is known that Governor so and so and so was declared by the court to have breached and to have acted illegally, and to have acted unconstitutionally, and to have abused his office. Let that be like a permanent stamp of shame, together with jail terms, of course.
We've seen countries like Korea. We've seen countries like United States, where public officials who have actually violated the law, being they face the punishment that comes with the crimes that they have committed, including the Watergate scandal. Is there something that we can draw as a country from what those jurisdictions have been able to do?
Yeah.
Is it a long way? Do we have a long way to go? Because these people have been doing it for decades now.
For decades. Yeah.
But us, we have barely started.
Yeah.
Is there something that we can draw from that?
From that aspect. Now, let me just say something. I think it goes back to what we talked about initially. It's a cultural and social problem. In Kenya, our politicians, our leaders have no shame at all. They have no shame. You've talked about the Watergate scandal. When things got too thick for the president then, Nixon, he actually resigned because he was about to be impeached. So he resigned. There's the shame of resigning. It's like, I've been found, let me resign. And you've seen in very many other jurisdictions, there are leaders, ministers who are found guilty of even petty issues and they resigned. But let's look at our particular situation here back home.
People say I'd rather die than resign.
I'd rather die than resign.
Yes.
I would rather die than resign. Yeah. Now, there's a lot we can borrow. Yeah. Now, if we set precedent, for instance, the closest case close to home would be in South Africa. You saw Zuma was actually jailed. The former president of South Africa. He was jailed. Yeah. If we did such things, I'm not saying that we go jail. I mean, if they're found liable, of course, let them do it. But if we had ministers serving jail terms, if we had governors serving jail terms, and not playing cheeky politics, and then in the end, they've been jailed, and then after 2-3 years, they've again been acquitted by a higher court or something. People playing with evidence, the kind of corruption that happens here as a country. If we don't have such, and we decide that we will actively pursue these individuals, we will actively hold individuals to account. We will actually enforce the constitution, not a matter of changing the law to provide this and this and that, but enforcing, because it is already there. If we enforce the aspect of personal responsibility and accountability, then we will start moving in the right direction as a country. Because the subsequent people who will hold those offices will actually remember that, my predecessor served, he failed, he acted illegally, and this is what happened to him. I don't want to fall in the same. We'll actually make public service to be less lucrative as we speak.
Yeah, there's this aspect that sometimes when a government official commits or violates the law, they are forced to resign, or sometimes they actually resign. But most cases in this country has been forced resignation. You just hear somebody wrote to the president and resigned, but it's actually forced resignation. Does resignation now means that your past actions have been, they have died due to the action of resignation? What is actually the impact of resignation in public offices that now sometimes people run to it when they have no particular option left?
So it was actually it's a very recent issue that happened with the Deputy President Gachagua. So he was being told that he should resign before being impeached. Because if you're impeached, you cannot hold office again. So resignation is a way of, it's a milder way of going out or exiting. Then you will come back again. Through another. So my stand is this. Yes, resign. But that does not wash away or wipe away your sins. You committed this offense. If you did, you have to own up to it. So if it was embezzling public funds, trial. You have to be tried. If it is abuse of office, be tried. And the courts and people actually should move. By people, I mean lawyers. The Constitution of Kenya right now has opened the doors for anyone, even you, even people who are not knowledgeable on the law, to start such fights whereby they say, okay, this person did so and so and so. Let us find the individual person culpable.
I think in Kenya, that's not usually the case.
But now we have to start it.
Yeah. With that, we'll be taking our second break, but do stay with us. We'll be having an interesting discussion on the tail segment of this particular discussion, looking into our questions and feedback from our audience. See you on the other side of this break.
Badala ya kutafuta kazi, tunaweza kuanzisha miradi yetu ambayo ingetusaidia kubadilisha maisha ya wazazi wetu.
Kwa vijana wenzangu, wengi hawana kazi, lakini ikiwa sisi wenyewe tutajiamini, tunaweza kujiajiri wenyewe.
Afrika kwa kweli tuna mahitaji ambayo ukiyasuluhisha unaweza kuathiri watu kwenye bara hili.
Bila uoga, watu huwa na uzalishaji zaidi, wanajawa na ujasiri, wanakuwa wabunifu na wanakuwa wenye maarifa.
Niliamua kuacha kazi. Hata kama sitafanikiwa, nitakuwa nimejaribu, nitakuwa najua haiwezekani.
Hakuna kitu cha ajabu hapa. Kila anayepata ufanisi hufanya kazi usiku na mchana.
Kitu kitakusukuma na kuwezesha kupata maarifa ambayo hukuwa nayo.
Tunajaribu kutengeneza kitu kitakachopita mipaka ya nchi hii.
Ikiwa unataka kubadilisha ulimwengu, anza na nyumbani.
staying with us. You're watching Long Matters. We are on the tail end of this particular discussion, looking into personal accountability when it comes to government officials. On this particular segment, it's a bit, more interactive. We get to have our audience ask questions to our guests in terms of issues surrounding this particular discussion. I'll first take the first two questions and then open it to the rest of the question.
Good evening. My name is Nahashon Kimochu. And I have this question of, in Kenya we have something called Tourette syndrome, in a way that you find that someone who is want to be held accountable, the people from that region where that person come, then start to demonstrate saying that we want to oust our person from office. What do you think can be the remedy of that? And also maybe, is it the high time to give EAC the power to institute suits rather than depending on this year, the DPP, because you have seen like the case of Moses Sereno Coral, where the DPP wanted to withdraw the case, but later the EAC insisted that it has the evidence, and then finally he was held liable. Some question.
The second question.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Mark Mashari. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Yeah, so my question is, do we have like a code of conduct of these leaders, whereby one issue that arose when we were having the protests was the issue of opulence. So like, do we have some way whereby leaders should behave in a certain manner, or put on some, these leaders were walking around putting on watches that were 2 million, and wananchi walikuwa wanasumbuka sana wakisema this leader has not come to our area, they have not done like development in our area, and yet they can afford to put on these flashy yes, yeah.
A show of opulence,
That opulence. So do we have like a code of conduct to govern these leaders?
Interesting. Wakili, you can answer those two first.
Yeah. We're beginning with the most latest question that you've asked. Do we have a code of conduct? Again, I'd say the Constitution is enough. The Leadership and Integrity Act is enough. And if we don't have any specific legislation in place, it goes back to morality. I don't know if you guys have done jurisprudence or you've done social foundations of law. In social foundations of law, there was an aspect of what is law, yeah? And there's an argument, the natural law theorists who argue that it's something that it comes naturally to you, yeah? It's something that is based on moral principles. Mm-hmm. So it goes back to the morality of an individual. In that, I being let's say for instance I'm the president, I wouldn't be engaging in a show of opulence while I know my citizenry is suffering. I being the cabinet secretary, I won't steal when I know very well that citizen services have been affected. Yeah. So it's actually a moral issue. We elect very moral very moral leaders in our society. And we'll have to go back and look at ourselves. Going to the second question, in that, because again, it ties down to what he said. You will find a particular circumstance where somebody is actually, there is a valid case in court against this person's conduct, breach, misdeeds, illegalities. And then people come out and say what? Huu ni mtu wetu, he is being targeted. Yeah?
It happens a lot.
It happens a lot. Yeah. Now, this is actually not the citizenry, not the leader. Okay, I mean, there is evidence here and there that they're usually paid. But, again, the solution to that will be what? Conducting massive civic education. So when you go home, talk to your parents, talk to your siblings, talk to your neighbors, talk to everyone. Let them know, yeah, what happens in other jurisdictions where there are success stories because of good and proper leadership. And I won't give up because I read a lot. And the issues that we are facing right now of corruption, let's say let's even look at one example, taxation. These are issues that were faced way before in other jurisdictions. Look at the US, for instance. What brought forth the independence in the US? People actually were protesting against taxes. In 2024, what were we protesting against? Taxes, yeah? So they say there's nothing new under the sun. So we will also get there as Kenyans if we actually proceed to hold our leaders accountable. When we are holding them accountable, we educate people back home that, this person is not being witch hunted. He actually did this, so let the law follow its due course. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And finally, the last question that was asked with regards to whether the ESCC and the DPP. Now, yeah, it's a big issue. I can tell you it's a really, really big issue, because you will find a circumstance where the DPP wants to withdraw a case, the ESCC doesn't want to withdraw a case. Giving them powers to prosecute, will that be sufficient? No, it's not sufficient, because again, what I can say is the Constitution as it is, when they gave prosecutorial powers to the Director of Public Prosecutions to again investigate, to prosecute, the drafters knew very well, or they had the proper intention as to why the DPP is the one who's supposed to investigate. That's basically the reason also why police officers nowadays don't prosecute matters. Yeah, you can't have a police officer coming and prosecuting the matter in court. So it wouldn't be a solution just calling for a more harmonious approach. Remember, withdrawing cases, the court also has to consent to it, with the leave of permission of the court. The DPP can withdraw, but they have to make an application in court. So it's about the court looking into the merits and demerits. Why is this case being withdrawn? There are particular instances where a case is actually being withdrawn on legitimate basis because there is no evidence. Maybe there is some issue with how the case has been brought forth in court. So it's a united effort. The issue of withdrawing, not withdrawing, let the court look into the merits. Like in that particular circumstance, the court acted as a check and balance because it refused, and the matter proceeded. So the institutions as they are perform perfectly. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you so much, Akili, for allowing our students to give us to ask the questions concerning this discussion. Now, as we bring the discussion to a close because of time, what is your take concerning the Wananchi movement that is morphing up to ensure accountability? They say the sovereign power belongs to the people.
Yes.
And the institution, as you have mentioned time and again, have somewhat failed, either due to lack of goodwill and what have you. So what do you think about the Wananchi movement that is coming up? We have seen people come out and call the president himself, write even letters, write letters to other bodies. What do you perceive of that in terms of accountability?
I'm even smiling because I love it. They say fearless, fearless. And if there's one thing that history can teach you is for you to get the reforms you need, you have to be very loud.
Okay.
You have to be more obtrusive than the others. You have to, if you're lawyers, you will have to do something extra. I'll give an example. You have 2 children. There's one child who is always patient. They don't cry when they want food. They don't make noise. They're just there. But you have another child who will cry the single moment something misses. Now, when it comes to attending to these 2 children, who takes precedent over the other?
The one who's crying.
The one who's making more noise. And there was a speech that was done by Emmeline Pankhurst in 1913 in Hartford in the US. And she said, and which I will again echo, for you to get the reform that you need, she was fighting for women's rights back then, but we can borrow some lessons. For you to make or to get the reforms you seek, you have to go a step further. You have to be loud. You have to be more obtrusive. You have to call for more papers. And these will be my parting words. She said this, that we will risk our lives, and we will risk our lives. But lives, in as much as they are important, we have to die for what we believe in. And we will not be the ones who will put ourselves to death. No, I won't kill myself. But we will force the enemy, now those who are in power and who are refusing to listen to the common Mwananchi, to a position whereby they have only 2 choices, to either give us freedom or to either give us death. So that is the parting shot. So we have to fight for it. Life is precious, but if somebody has to die, let it not be the future generation, let it be us. We have to fight for the future we want. I've traveled, I've seen systems that work, I've seen institutions that work, and there is no reason why those same systems and why us as a country cannot transform for ourselves and even for our future generation. So give us freedom or give us death. We'll push for accountability, in my personal accountability. We will do whatever it takes on my part, if it's filing case, if it's going to the streets, if it's rallying a call to action, we will do whatever we have to do, but we have to change this country eventually. Freedom or death.
Yeah, so, when the institution failed, we now, take up the action as the Mwananchi and see whether we can, find our way. Because that's how we fought for independence.
That's how we fought for independence. That's how all revolutions were won.
Yeah.
In the US, they gained independence. It was bloody. It wasn't easy.
Mhm.
For women to get the right to vote, it was bloody. It was not easy.
Mhm.
For the French Revolution to happen, it was bloody. It was not easy. For our independence, again, it was bloody. For multi-party democracy, it was bloody. It was not easy.
Mhm.
And even for these other fights that we are picking on the issues of accountability, of integrity, we have to fight on. And I love this generation because we don't stand up. We don't allow the government to mess up, and we keep quiet.
Yeah.
We will talk, we will make noise, and we will hit the streets if it's necessary.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Wakili Pareno, for giving us a legal perspective on personal accountability and also insights that you've seen world over and what we can do as a country. All right, that has been Wakili Pareno on this particular discussion of personal accountability. We have a long way to go as a country, but it is not the end. We have to fight by calling to action. The small way at the village, at the top, a small effort goes a long way. My name is Irene Mwangi. Because of time, have yourselves a splendid night.